Manuela let out a deep, heavy sigh, her gaze fixed on the rain that blurred the view through the window. It was the end of July, with the promise of clear sunny skies if not for the stifling heat. The disappointment made her glance at the large round clock on the wall. Its hands indicated it was almost 6 in the morning, signaling that it was nearly time to run to catch the bus. Although she could protect herself from the rain with an umbrella, there was no shield against gray days and her sinking disposition. She took a sip of lukewarm coffee, quickly washed the cup, and headed for the door. The soft sound of a door opening, followed by gentle and dragging steps, reached her ears. "Manuela, are you ready?" asked her grandmother, appearing in the hallway. The older woman's eyes were half closed, sleepy. She was wrapped in a robe decorated with blue flowers, a Mother's Day gift Manuela had given her last year, now worn from so much washing. Mrs. Castro, retired for several years, had taken on the responsibility of caring for the house since the tragic accident that took the lives of Manuela and Diego's parents. Despite her advanced age and fragile health, she had refused help. "Yes, Grandma," Manuela replied from the hallway, wearing her old autumn leather jacket. "Did you eat anything, dear?" The elderly woman frowned, crossing her arms over her chest, observing her granddaughter as she tied her sneakers. "Yes, Grandma," Manuela assured, but more out of habit than honesty. She rationalized that small white lies were acceptable if they helped reassure her grandmother. "Today we have a big wedding at the hotel, a banquet for 100 guests. Maybe I'll bring some treats for you and Diego," she suggested. Mrs. Castro promptly rejected the idea with a wave, expressing her objection to the entire conversation. She was a traditional woman who firmly believed that anything Manuela brought home from work, besides her salary, was equivalent to theft. Manuela laughed and said the police might show up because of some sandwiches. Her grandmother retorted with disapproval, "What if they do?" she questioned. Mrs. Castro's former job as an accountant at a kindergarten had instilled in her a strong sense of probity. Despite her diligence and competence, upon reaching retirement age, the administration had politely asked her to step aside to make room for younger workers. Mrs. Castro's attempts to find another job were met with disappointment. Her age had become an obstacle, overshadowing her vast experience. She tried to supplement the family income with odd jobs, but the physical and emotional effort harmed her health more than the financial benefits they brought. Manuela was determined to avoid these tragic ends, which she considered unnecessary sacrifices. She insisted that her grandmother deserved to enjoy her retirement like any woman her age. At 22, Manuela had taken on the financial burden of her small family. "Grandma, I believe the school is closed today." "They're in quarantine," Manuela reminded her, referring to her younger brother's circumstances. "Let him sleep," she said as she walked out the door. She was sure her deeply religious grandmother was saying a silent prayer for her. After a kiss on the cheek and a warm farewell from her grandmother, she made her way down the dimly lit hallway and out into the rain-soaked street. Manuela worked as a maid in a renowned luxury hotel. Although she wished she could aspire to positions like a receptionist, she still lacked the specialized training required. However, this was the industry she was determined to venture into, studying remotely. In fact, Manuela's skills and commitment already made her a deserving candidate for promotion. She secretly dreamed of one day managing her own charming hotel, a place where her family could work and live comfortably, a refreshing change from their current apartment. The salary was decent, which was always a bonus. Her main clients were affluent people who often left generous tips for the young maid. The hotel was frequented by politicians, businessmen, celebrities, and other influential figures, including those who arrived with unidentified partners. Interestingly, this last group left the biggest tips, possibly as silent payments. She also appreciated the flexible hours and the possibility of swapping shifts with her colleagues in emergencies. But the work was physically and mentally exhausting. Every penny she earned was the fruit of hard work. Not all guests were grateful, and not all employees were supportive. Manuela's resilience and diplomatic demeanor became her strengths. They allowed her to maintain composure in unpleasant situations, finding solutions even in the most challenging circumstances, both with her colleagues and when interacting with clients. Her diplomatic skills were often tested by the intrusive hotel manager, Breno. It seemed he had made it his mission to annoy her as much as possible, patrolling the hotel tirelessly. And today, when she entered the communal locker room, he approached with indifference and confidence. "Good morning, Manuela," Breno said, smoothing his hair and running his hands down her back. The touch sent a shiver down her spine, and she momentarily froze near her locker. "Hi, Mr. Breno," she murmured, hiding her discomfort. "Why so formal?" "It's just us here," he said suggestively. "Go on, put on your uniform. The workday is about to start. I'd hate to dock your pay, though sometimes I don't mind." He laughed playfully, pretending to fidget with his locker. It was evident he had entered here expecting a provocative response from the maid. Manuela gritted her teeth, suppressing the flood of unspoken words she had for him. She had many reasons to be furious. Since day one, her light hair, hazel eyes, and distinct nose had caught Breno's attention. However, instead of making advances and accepting rejection gracefully, he took advantage of his position as manager to impose his unwanted interest, making inappropriate comments and trying to touch her back or knees at every opportunity. He had even inappropriately slapped her, making lascivious comments about her uniform skirt. Manuela had learned to endure Breno's behavior and his unwanted attention. What else could she do? Retaliate and risk losing her job and salary? No, Manuela would not. She was also unwilling to settle for a cashier job with a third of her salary. She believed that with patience and perseverance, she would eventually progress in her career and escape his control. Moreover, she wanted to pamper her little brother Diego with the latest toys and buy new essentials for her grandmother. Manuela also feared the possible consequences for her colleagues if she revealed Breno's behavior, as, often, the woman ends up being blamed. If he harassed her, they would certainly say that she, Manuela, must have been flirting or seeking a promotion, or worse, he would dismiss her allegations as fabrication seeking attention. Once, when Manuela tried to oppose Breno's incessant advances, responding to his not-so-subtle insinuation about staying late to check her bed-making skills in a hotel suite, she stated, "Mr. Breno, I am not interested in what you are insinuating, nor do I have the time or inclination to get involved in any kind of personal relationship." "I'm not proposing a relationship," he retorted, undisturbed. "We are adults, Manuela, and there is no harm in maintaining a close relationship with colleagues. Trust me, this could significantly change your life. Who knows, maybe the receptionist position is about to open. I could give you a good opportunity. Or do you plan to clean bathrooms indefinitely?" "No, thank you. I can manage on my own," Manuela replied. You are dismissing this too quickly, Manuela. Soon you will understand that everything has a price in this world. Sometimes Manuela's resistance triggered Breno's ire, resulting in a cascade of problems. He would scold her for invisible specks of dust in rooms she had meticulously cleaned. On one occasion, he reprimanded her in front of the entire staff for being overly friendly with a guest. Know your place, young lady. Who do you think you are to speak to our esteemed guests in this manner? Remember, you are just a maid, Breno scolded. He erroneously assumed she was flirting when the guest had merely asked for directions to the gym. Despite the evident misunderstanding, arguing was futile. Lately, he had been closely monitoring her schedule, ensuring she neither left early nor arrived late. He even threatened to fire her. Fortunately, the malicious manager was just one of a few problems in the work environment. Despite the weight of the carts filled with cleaning supplies and the pressure to prepare rooms perfectly in record time, akin to military training, quickly changing uniforms, and doing her best to ignore Breno's lascivious looks, Manuela hurried out of the locker room. Once again, she immersed herself in the daily work routine, which always made time pass quickly. Manuela. Vittoria from reception called out, peeking into the kitchen during lunchtime. Could you check if the new employee cleaned the outdoor pool area? They had a party there last night, but the weather is improving. Guests might want to use the pool. We need to ensure it's clean and ready. No problem, I'm on it, Manuela agreed. And the other girls? Did Mr. Breno give them any tasks? For now, it's just you, Vittoria replied. All right then, said Manuela. She quickly finished arranging the dishes and headed toward the pool area. The hotel had 2 pools, one indoor and one outdoor. The previous night, a Hawaiian-themed party had been held at the outdoor pool. As Manuela moved towards the pool, she picked up half-empty coconut shells and pineapple husks, remnants of the delicious cocktails from the night before. Approaching the pool, she noticed the sun finally starting to peek through the clouds. She headed to the storage room to get some garbage bags when a strange sound caught her attention. It was a strange splashing noise, as if something or someone had fallen into the water. She turned towards the sound but initially saw nothing. Only when she was about to look away did she spot something emerging and struggling in the water. Her heart sank. It was a young boy struggling in the water. Oh my God, she exclaimed, panicking as adrenaline surged through her. Without thinking twice, Manuela ran towards the pool and dove into the water. The icy coldness of the water was a shock, but all she could focus on was reaching the child. She wasn't a strong swimmer, and every meter was a struggle, making her realize how crucial her quick response was. Once she reached the boy, she saw with horror that he was no longer moving. He seemed to have lost his strength. Manuela grabbed his clothes, keeping his face above water, and began swimming back with difficulty. It was slow and arduous, but she was gradually getting closer to the pool's edge. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, either from the weight or intense fear. When they reached the edge, Manuela pulled the boy out of the water and laid him down. She pressed her ear to his chest, and her heart sank when she realized he wasn't breathing. Desperately, she began shouting for help, but the pool area was deserted. The only sound was the music, not the frantic cries of a woman. The CPR training she had received seemed like a distant memory. She didn't know what to do. Should she look for help? But she knew every second was precious. Manuela calmed herself, forcing back the tears threatening to overflow. She started pressing the boy's chest, making desperate attempts to expel the water from his lungs. Then, she began performing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. All other thoughts disappeared as she focused solely on saving the child's life. Suddenly, the miracles she had silently prayed for happened. The boy began coughing, expelling the water that had invaded his lungs. His eyes opened, clear and blue like the morning sky. He looked at Manuela with fear and confusion, then his breathing began to return in irregular gasps, and he started crying in fear. To Manuela's surprise, she found herself crying too, but her tears were of joy and relief. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said through tears, pulling the boy into a comforting hug. "You're safe now. Everything will be all right." The boy clung tightly to her shirt, his small body trembling against hers. Shortly after, an ambulance, called by the hotel staff, quickly arrived and took the child to the hospital. For Manuela, still shaken by the shock of the situation, her day was far from over. Hours later, when Manuela was changing out of her work uniform, Breno burst into the staff break room, panting. "What happened outside?" he demanded. Manuela, who had changed into her own clothes, was caught off guard. She was quietly sipping a cup of soothing lemon-scented tea. "What do you mean, Mr. Breno?" she asked, gripping her cup so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Where do you think you're going?" he said, confused. "Do you think you did your job well today, Manuela? Because I'm paying you to let a child almost drown while you're on duty." Manuela understood the root of her boss's fury. Earlier, superiors had spoken to the manager about her housekeeper colleagues, Vittoria and Bianca, who were quick to share the latest gossip. Apparently, the day's near accident coincided with a surprise visit from the owner of the entire hotel chain, Eduardo Martins. He had come to assess the staff's performance. According to Bianca, Eduardo was not pleased with the state of the hotel and reprimanded the manager for his negligence, including the fact that the pool should have been supervised by staff. But Breno had sent them off on other tasks. Manuela felt no sympathy for Breno nor took pleasure in his situation. Instead, a strange numbness enveloped her, probably as a result of the day's distressing events. "I'm done for today," Manuela responded calmly. "And what about the third floor? The other girls are handling it. They said they can manage without me." "Who gave you permission to make those decisions? Do you think you're in charge now?" he retorted. "You know what, Manuela, I'm tired of your disobedience," he said, lowering his voice. "So tired that I'm seriously considering ending your employment. For saving that child." Manuela shot back, her voice rising in indignation. "Calm down, Manuela. The details of what happened aren't clear yet," he said, patting her knee in a paternalistic manner. "However, I'm willing to give you one more chance." "No, thank you," she retorted. "Are you sure?" he asked with a wry smile. "What if I suggest that the boy fell into the pool due to your negligence? After all, you were the only one there. Did anyone see you pull him out of the water?" "No, they didn't, and the parents have significant influence. They're investigating the matter." "You're trying to blackmail me," Manuela interrupted. "Blackmail? How dare you?" "No, Manuela, I'm merely proposing the most sensible solution. I hope you make the right choice." "I will," Manuela replied. She placed her half-empty cup on the table, the previously comforting tea had lost its appeal. She stood up and looked him straight in the eye. "If firing me is the worst that can happen, so be it," she retorted. With that, she left the room, determined not to return to work the next day. She'd had enough. Sure, she could report Breno's behavior, but there were reasons that made her hesitate. Eduardo Martins, owner of a successful hotel chain, led a busy life. Managing a large enterprise was demanding, but nothing compared to the complexities of his personal life. Despite being a successful man with many admirers, his interest in relationships had waned. 3 years ago, a car accident took the life of his beloved wife. Since then, he had immersed himself in work, seeking refuge from the pain and emptiness left by her loss. Work became more than just a paycheck for Eduardo, it became a sanctuary where he could escape the void left by Anna's departure. Last week, Eduardo had been deeply involved in examining one of his hotels. He was not pleased with what he discovered: numerous deficiencies, gaps, and suspicious activities that indicated possible foul play. The situation was dire, but Eduardo chose not to take impulsive measures to resolve it, preferring to thoroughly analyze the data before making any decisions. As the day dawned, Eduardo was already in the hotel lobby. Victoria, the receptionist, greeted him with her usual smile and cordiality. "Good morning, Mr. Martins," she said cheerfully. "Good morning, Victoria. How is the reception?" "Everything in order?" he asked. She responded enthusiastically with a beaming smile. Eduardo walked further into the hotel premises. "How is the boy?" "What is the word from Miss Souza?" he questioned. Victoria hesitated briefly before sharing an update. "The boy is recovering well, and his parents are grateful for the hotel's quick action in saving him. They expressed special gratitude to Mr. Breno for his timely intervention." "So, he's a knight in shining armor, is he?" Eduardo mused. "That's strange. We spoke yesterday, and he barely mentioned the incident." Victoria remained silent, avoiding Eduardo's gaze and pretending to be engrossed in the computer screen. Eduardo felt a knot in his stomach, realizing something was wrong. He considered pressing her further, but Breno's timely entrance into the lobby diverted his attention. "Victoria, call the head of security to meet me in my office," Eduardo instructed the receptionist before joining him towards the elevator. After examining another set of security reports and discovering additional minor infractions, Eduardo became convinced of the need for a thorough and systematic investigation. Once he set aside his immediate tasks, Eduardo directed his attention to Breno. "Mr. Breno, you were quite modest about your heroic act yesterday," he approached gently. "You acted like a hero and didn't even bother to make it known, did you? I'd like to express my sincere gratitude for your swift and courageous action during the emergency." Breno was momentarily stunned by the praise. "Anyone in my position would have done the same. That's exactly what I told the boy's parents. It's lucky you were present when needed. However, I hope our team remains vigilant in their designated roles so such heroic interventions won't be necessary," Eduardo commented. "I apologize for this lapse. In fact, I was in the process of firing one of our employees. She wasn't fitting well into the position and was ignoring our protocols," Breno explained. Eduardo was surprised by the revelation. He knew that firing was sometimes necessary, but it was still a significant step in business and should be approached with caution. Next, Eduardo and the head of security reviewed the security footage from the past few days. Eduardo's face grew increasingly stern, his brows furrowing even more. Not only did he find validation for his suspicions, but he also encountered something completely unexpected. "Mr. Cruz, do we have the footage of the incident in the open pool area from yesterday?" Eduardo asked. "I'm sorry to inform you, sir," Cruz replied, bowing his head in apology. "We were in the process of replacing some faulty cameras. I notified Mr. Breno the same day. Unfortunately, we don't have any recordings from that day." "I understand." Meanwhile, Vittoria, the receptionist, immediately noticed when Breno approached. He was inquiring about the questions Eduardo had asked earlier. "You didn't speak much, Mr. Breno," she retorted, losing her composure. "Remember that oversharing can cause you trouble. Is that clear?" Breno warned with a chilling tone, "Make sure to pass this message to the others. Sure, he is the owner, but you wouldn't want to get into trouble, right?" At that moment, Vittoria received a call from the security office. Upon answering, she heard Eduardo's voice. She cast a nervous glance at Breno, who was staring. "Yes, I understand. I'll be there shortly," she said. As she entered the office, Eduardo's last words echoed in her mind, "Think twice before making foolish choices." Several days later, Manuela was sitting in the kitchen with her family, drinking hot tea and discussing her day when there was a soft knock on the door. Upon opening it, she was surprised to find a tall man with dark hair standing there, dressed in an expensive suit. "Can I help you?" Manuela asked, aware of her voice, with her brother peering from behind her, curious. "I think I'm here to see you," the visitor replied, looking a bit unsure. "Oh my God, finally a man in a suit. No matter what he's asking, say yes. He looks like the perfect groom." Manuela's grandmother couldn't contain her joy, clapping her hands. Manuela's face turned red with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, please don't mind her. She loves to joke around," she apologized to the visitor. "It's all right," he reassured with a laugh. Manuela's grandmother, Mrs. Castro, was known for joking about Manuela's introverted nature, taking every opportunity to tease her in public. It was all in good spirits, as she just worried that Manuela was so absorbed in her work that she had little time for personal matters. The visitor, Eduardo, found the situation amusing, recognizing to himself that his attire did make him look like a potential groom. Just as Manuela was about to question if he had the wrong address, he spoke. "You must be Manuela, right?" After she confirmed, he introduced himself as the new human resources manager of the hotel and mentioned that he was there on the hotel owner's orders. Without further delay, he informed Manuela about the recent events at the hotel, leaving her deeply concerned. "I'm aware that you were unfairly dismissed," he revealed, catching Manuela off guard. "How do you know that?" she asked. "That's not important," he dismissed her question. Engulfed in a whirlwind of emotions, Manuela stared at her guest, diving into thoughts. The silence was soon broken by Eduardo. "Why didn't you speak up about this?" he asked. After a pause, Manuela finally spoke. "Well, first of all, I just wanted to get rid of everything related to the hotel. It was an emotional reaction, maybe, but I had enough. Besides, it would be my word against the managers. I didn't want to create more problems." Eduardo didn't need to ask all these questions, he had all the answers to his doubts. He understood that Manuela had tried to protect her colleagues from facing any retaliation that might arise from expressing their complaints. An anonymous report made by a hotel maid confirmed all the insidious events. She valued her colleagues' jobs above her own job security. Her main concern was not to create problems for the hardworking staff who relied on the hotel for their livelihood. Changing the subject after a moment of silence, Eduardo steered the conversation towards lighter topics. After a few minutes of friendly conversation, he bid her farewell, careful not to prolong his visit. Manuela decided to take some time off work to focus on her studies, as exams were approaching. Her grandmother, however, couldn't miss the opportunity with the handsome visitor, much to Manuela's amusement. "Dear Manuela, he was a great opportunity. There was something truly special about that man. Grandma, seriously, what was I supposed to do? Invite him out?" Manuela laughed at the idea. "Well, why not? There's nothing wrong with a woman taking the initiative." "All right, Grandma, if I see him again, I'll make sure to do that," Manuela joked. Days passed, and one day, after returning home from an errand, Manuela found the house unusually quiet. Her grandmother wouldn't want to hear that her phone was missing, along with her younger brother Diego. Her confusion was soon cleared up by a note left on the table. "The man in the suit came back and took us to the hotel." A wave of anxiety washed over Manuela as she tried to gather her thoughts. What could have led to this situation? Was it Breno's doing again? He seemed relentless in his schemes. Wasting no time, Manuela called a taxi and headed to the hotel. Upon arrival, she quickly spotted Vittoria at the reception, with a smile stretching from ear to ear. "Vittoria, have you seen my grandmother and brother?" Manuela's words were filled with concern. Vittoria's smile faltered as she noticed the worried expression on Manuela's face. "Wait, what? I thought you were in on the plan. Go to the restaurant." Rushing to the restaurant, Manuela found her grandmother and Diego already seated at a table, their faces beaming with joy. Before she could question them, she was warmly welcomed by Eduardo, who guided her to join them at the table. "Please, have a seat," Eduardo indicated an empty chair. "Your grandmother told me you were in a hurry." With a confused expression, Manuela asked, "Can someone tell me what's going on?" At that moment, Eduardo gave a small snap of his fingers, and to Manuela's surprise, Breno approached them. However, he wasn't dressed in his usual manager's attire but rather in a waiter's uniform. Placing menus on the table, Breno announced in a professional tone, "Welcome to the hotel restaurant. What would you like to drink while you decide on the dishes?" Caught off guard, Manuela's eyes met Breno's as she tried to grasp the situation. "It's good to see you again," he said, glancing at Breno and giving him an affirmative nod. "I'll let you look at the menu. Let me know when you're ready to order," Breno said before heading to another part of the restaurant to attend to other customers. Manuela watched him for a moment, then turned her attention back to Eduardo. Seeing her confused expression, he decided to reveal his true identity. "Manuela," he began, "I apologize for any confusion. My name is Eduardo Martins. I'm actually the owner of this hotel chain." As this new information began to sink in, Eduardo started to recount what had happened since their last encounter. He explained that he had conducted a personal investigation into the hotel's management, uncovering Breno's wrongdoings. "Mr. Breno never expected me to delve so deep into the hotel's security footage. The recordings revealed that he wasn't present during the pool incident, though they did capture you walking in that direction. Although the incident itself wasn't recorded, detailed conversations with each employee were enough to piece together the truth. Manuela glanced at Breno, who was now attending to other tables, her mind racing. Eduardo noticed her expression and anticipated her next question. "I know you're probably wondering why Breno is still here. Initially, I was furious and planned to fire him. I even considered reporting him to the Hotel and Restaurant Association, which would have essentially barred him from working in this industry again." He paused for emphasis before continuing, "But as it turns out, you inadvertently gave him a second chance." Seeing the confusion on Manuela's face, Eduardo realized he needed to clarify his earlier statement. He begged for a second chance, promising to change his behavior. "My first reaction was pure anger. I wanted him to pay for his actions in the severest way possible." Eduardo paused again, his eyes briefly drifting to his clasped hands. "But I changed my mind. My conversations with the people he worked with convinced me, they only had praise for his kindness and fairness. So, instead of giving Breno a severe punishment, I decided to offer him one last chance to redeem himself by starting his career over from scratch. As you can see, he chose to accept." There was a reflective silence following Eduardo's revelation. Eventually, he broke the silence. "Manuela, although it was important to explain all of this to you, that's not the only reason I brought you here today." Suddenly, the entire hotel staff seemed to appear out of nowhere, lining up in front of them. Eduardo turned to face the crowd and announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I introduce your new manager, Miss Manuela Castro." Applause and smiles filled the room, and as the applause died down, Eduardo handed Manuela a piece of paper. "This is your contract. I encourage you to sign it. And just to be clear, I don't accept no for an answer." Manuela was absolutely shocked by the sudden turn of events. She blinked, certain that at any moment she would wake up from this unbelievable dream. Her mind was in a whirlwind, trying to process the reality that she, Manuela Castro, had just been offered the position of hotel manager. Her grandmother and Diego seemed to reflect her state of shock, their eyes practically bulging out of their sockets, shining with a mixture of disbelief and joy. Manuela looked at the piece of paper in her hand, her ticket to a new beginning. It wasn't just a professional achievement that filled her with emotion, it was an affirmation of her worth and a vindication against the unjust actions she had been subjected to. It felt surreal, a complete reversal of the despair that had marked her life in recent weeks. As Manuela looked around, taking in the happy faces, the genuine applause, and the encouraging gestures from her future colleagues, she realized this wasn't a dream. This was reality, a wonderful reality she used to only imagine. Breno approached the table with a bottle of champagne in his hands, pouring it into the glasses. Despite all the animosity Manuela had felt toward him, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of compassion for him. He used to be her superior, always breathing down her neck, criticizing and reprimanding her. But now he was in a position to serve her, his former subordinate. The tables had truly turned. "Thank you, Breno," she said, acknowledging his service, catching him off guard with her unexpected gratitude. "I'm very sorry for everything, Manuela. I hope I can make amends in the future," he said with genuine remorse. Eduardo observed the exchange with a sense of admiration, noting the grace and compassion with which Manuela handled the situation. It confirmed his decision, He knew without a shadow of a doubt that he had made the right choice in appointing Manuela as the new manager. A year passed, and the hotel entered a new era under the dedicated guidance of Manuela Castro. She was not only a shrewd and committed manager but also a person with a kind heart who created an environment of comfort and happiness for all the guests. Manuela proved to be an exceptional and energetic manager, taking a personal interest in ensuring the satisfaction of each guest. Having started from the bottom herself, she understood the importance of treating employees with empathy and emphasizing their situation. She was familiar with the background and experiences of each staff member. Manuela always made it a point to interact with them on equal footing while handling daily tasks. The distressing encounters with her former feared manager were now a thing of the past. Breno had become more reserved, often choosing to remain silent whenever he crossed paths with Manuela, fearing team meetings. He simply observed and listened attentively, managing only a faint smile. As the months passed, Eduardo found himself increasingly drawn to Manuela. What began as business visits gradually turned into a desire to spend more time in her company. He felt deeply attracted to this vibrant young woman who had transformed the hotel's fortunes. One day, Eduardo, unable to contain his emotions any longer, decided to confess his feelings to Manuela. When he arrived at the hotel, his heart was pounding in his chest as he made his way to her office. Manuela welcomed him with a smile, her eyes shining with happiness. In that moment, Eduardo felt as if time had stopped. When he looked at Manuela, he began, his words stuttering due to nerves, "I'm not sure how to express this. I made a promise to myself not to break a certain rule, but it seems you forced me to do just that. You've captured my heart and become incredibly important to me. I can't hide my feelings any longer." He held his breath, waiting for her response. A sigh of relief escaped him when he heard her confess that she also had feelings for him. A wave of happiness enveloped them, and in a gentle gesture, they drew closer than ever, culminating in a soft kiss. For years, Manuela had only known the love of her grandmother and brother, but now she realized there was someone else who held a special place in her heart. 6 months later, the hotel hosted a grand wedding celebrating the union of Eduardo and Manuela. Unexpectedly, the creative mind behind the special meals and activities for the event was none other than Breno. He worked diligently to ensure everything went smoothly. Manuela was pleasantly surprised by this change in Breno. During the moment designated for speeches, Breno asked for the opportunity to say a few words. He modestly approached the microphone, still dressed in his work uniform. The crowd fell silent as they watched him. He lowered his gaze for a moment, gathering his thoughts before speaking. "Manuela, you have been an example of humility. You've taught me so much. I've learned that no matter how terrible a person may be, if they are lucky enough to have someone like you in their life, they can always count on a second chance." Then, turning to Eduardo, Breno continued, "Eduardo, as much as I want to say that you're a lucky man, that wouldn't be accurate. Who could deserve this more than you? Congratulations to both of you." The audience was moved by his sincere words and broke into applause. Breno approached the newlyweds, shaking their hands and displaying a genuine smile. This marked a new beginning for Breno as well, free from prejudice and intimidation. Manuela cherished her busy life. Sometimes, she would look at her extended family and feel a sense of wonder. Everyone seemed so familiar, as if they had lived their entire lives together, side by side, united. Shortly after the wedding, Manuela had to temporarily step away from managing the hotel. She and Eduardo were overjoyed to discover they were expecting their first child, a baby girl.